John D. Rockefeller didn't become powerful because he was ruthless. He became powerful because people trusted him when they shouldn't have. And that trust wasn't accidental. It was a system. Today, we're going to break down the myth of Rockefeller and reveal the real secret behind his billions. When most people think of John D. Rockefeller, the first image that comes to mind is often a ruthless tycoon. They imagine a man who crushed competitors, manipulated markets, and did whatever it took to get rich. That story has been told in books, movies, and countless articles. It's dramatic, easy to remember, and it sells. But it's not the full picture, and it's not the secret to his lasting power. The truth is that Rockefeller's success wasn't built on sheer force or intimidation. It was built on a systematic trust. He understood that in a world full of risk and uncertainty, people make decisions based on who they believe they can rely on, not who shouts the loudest. Investors, partners, suppliers, and even competitors all had to make choices every day, and Rockefeller created a system where they could predict his actions with confidence. That predictability became his most powerful weapon. Think about it. If someone consistently delivers what they promise, even in small ways, people start to take bigger risks with them, and bigger risks mean bigger opportunities. Rockefeller's genius was that he made trust repeatable and measurable. He didn't rely on charm or intimidation. He relied on consistency, predictability, and the perception of reliability. Over time, that system compounded into enormous influence and wealth. It's also important to note what most people misunderstand about him. Rockefeller wasn't a villain in the comic book sense, and he wasn't a hero in the traditional sense either. He wasn't flashy or charismatic. He wasn't someone who gave motivational speeches or relied on public admiration. Instead, he quietly built a framework that others could depend on, and that framework created leverage, power, money, and influence that multiplied over time. This is why many myths about Rockefeller focus on ruthless business tactics, but they miss the point. His true strength lay in making trust a tangible, repeatable system. Once you understand this, you realize the lesson isn't about history, it's about strategy. The same principles can be applied to business today, to creators, to investors, anyone who wants to turn credibility into influence. In the next chapter, we'll explore the era Rockefeller operated in, why trust mattered so much in his time, and how the conditions of his world made his system so effective. But before we do that, remember this. What seems like ruthlessness at first glance is often just a well-designed system operating quietly behind the scenes. To understand why Rockefeller's reputation system worked so well, you first need to understand the world he operated in. This was the late 1800s, a period of rapid industrial growth, weak regulation, and constant uncertainty. The oil industry, in particular, was chaotic. Prices swung wildly, supply chains broke often, businesses failed overnight. There were no strong safety nets, no modern financial protections, no reliable institutions to fall back on. If a deal went wrong, you didn't sue, you absorbed the loss. That meant every decision carried real personal risk. In an environment like this, trust wasn't a nice-to-have, it was survival. Investors needed to know who wouldn't disappear when things went bad. Suppliers needed to know who would pay on time. Railroads needed to know who would honor long-term agreements, and workers needed to know which companies would still exist next year. In short, people didn't just choose the highest bidder, they chose the most predictable one. This is where Rockefeller understood something most of his peers didn't. While others competed loudly, chased short-term wins, or relied on aggression, Rockefeller focused on being boringly reliable. He positioned himself not as the most exciting player in the oil industry, but as the safest one. And in a dangerous environment, safety attracts capital. Many of his competitors thought power came from dominance, crushing rivals, forcing deals, or moving fast and loud. But those strategies created fear, not confidence. Fear repels long-term partners.
Rockefeller, instead, made people feel secure. He reduced uncertainty wherever he touched, and when uncertainty drops, people commit more resources, more money, and more trust. This context matters because his system wouldn't have worked in a world where trust was optional. It worked because the environment demanded it. Every broken promise carried consequences. Every reliable action compounded. Over time, Rockefeller became the default choice, not because he was the cheapest, loudest, or most aggressive, but because he was the most dependable. This is the key lesson of his era. When the environment is unstable, trust becomes leverage, and those who understand how to manufacture reliability don't just survive, they accumulate influence quietly. In the next chapter, we'll break down the first part of Rockefeller's reputation system itself, how he made predictability visible, and why being predictable was the foundation everything else was built on. By the time Rockefeller began scaling his operations, one truth was already clear. Money alone wasn't the real constraint. The real constraint was risk. Every investor faced the same question: who can I trust with my capital? Every supplier faced another: who will still be here tomorrow? And every partner faced the most dangerous one of all: who won't change the rules once I commit? In an unstable world, these questions mattered more than price, speed, or ambition. Rockefeller understood this earlier than most. He realized that trust wasn't an emotion, it was an economic instrument. And like any instrument, it could be designed, reinforced, and multiplied. Trust reduces friction. When people trust you, they don't need constant reassurance. They don't demand excessive guarantees. They don't micromanage every detail. That reduction in friction saves time, lowers costs, and accelerates scale. Rockefeller didn't need to fight for every deal. Many deals came to him because working with him felt safer than the alternatives. This is where trust quietly becomes currency. Unlike money, trust compounds without being spent. Every fulfilled promise increases future confidence. Every predictable action lowers perceived risk. Over time, Rockefeller didn't just accumulate capital, he accumulated belief. And belief is what allows systems to grow beyond the limits of any single individual. Importantly, Rockefeller didn't try to be trusted by everyone. He focused on the people who mattered most: financiers, suppliers, transportation partners, and key operators. These were the gatekeepers of scale. Once they trusted him, their trust became a signal to others. Reputation, at that point, became transferable. One person's confidence created another's certainty. This is why trust works better than force. Force creates compliance, but compliance ends the moment pressure disappears. Trust, on the other hand, invites voluntary cooperation. People choose to stay, to invest, to commit more deeply. And when cooperation is voluntary, it scales far more efficiently than control ever could. Rockefeller also understood that trust had to be visible. Quiet reliability behind closed doors wasn't enough. His system ensured that others publicly demonstrated confidence in him through partnerships, investments, and long-term agreements. Those public commitments acted as proof. They told the market, if serious people trust him, maybe we should too. Over time, this created a feedback loop. Trust attracted capital. Capital increased stability. Stability reinforced trust. And as the loop strengthened, Rockefeller gained leverage without needing to appear dominant. Decisions became easier. Terms became more favorable. Opportunities appeared that others never even saw. What most people miss is that trust isn't passive. It's not something you hope for or wait to receive. Rockefeller treated it as infrastructure. He built it deliberately, protected it carefully, and used it strategically. Once trust reached a certain level, it functioned exactly like currency, except more powerful, because it shaped behavior before negotiations even began. This is the deeper lesson. In systems where uncertainty exists, and uncertainty always exists, trust becomes the real medium of exchange. Those who learn how to create it consistently don't just earn money, they earn optionality, leverage, and control over outcomes without needing to fight for them. In the next chapter, we'll break down the first concrete step in Rockefeller's reputation system, how he made predictability visible, and why being predictable was the foundation everything else was built on.
Every system of trust starts with one requirement: predictability. Not brilliance, not speed, not aggression, predictability. Rockefeller understood that people don't trust what they can't anticipate. In a volatile environment, uncertainty is the enemy. The more unpredictable someone appears, the more risk others attach to them. And when risk increases, cooperation slows down or disappears entirely. So, Rockefeller designed his behavior to be easy to read. He honored contracts exactly as written. He followed through on small commitments with the same seriousness as large ones. And he avoided emotional or impulsive decisions that would confuse partners or investors. Over time, people didn't need to guess how he would act. They already knew. This predictability wasn't accidental, it was engineered. Rockefeller understood that consistency in action creates consistency in expectations. When expectations stabilize, trust forms naturally. People stop preparing for worst-case scenarios and start planning for long-term outcomes. That shift is subtle but powerful. Being predictable doesn't mean being passive or weak. It means removing unnecessary uncertainty from every interaction. Rockefeller could still negotiate hard, restructure deals, or make strategic moves, but he did so within a pattern people recognized. Even when others disagreed with his decisions, they respected them because they fit an established behavior. Predictability also worked as a filter. People who preferred chaos, shortcuts, or opportunistic behavior often avoided working with him. But serious partners, the ones who valued stability, leaned in. This naturally concentrated trust among the right players, strengthening his position without public confrontation. Over time, this predictability became visible in the market. Suppliers adjusted their terms, investors relaxed their requirements, partners committed for longer periods. Not because Rockefeller promised more, but because he surprised less. And in systems built on risk, fewer surprises translate directly into leverage. The key insight here is simple. People don't trust perfection, they trust patterns. Rockefeller didn't try to impress, he tried to be reliable in the same way over and over again. That repetition created confidence, and that confidence became the foundation of everything that followed. In the next chapter, we'll examine the second step of the system, why Rockefeller embraced what most people avoid, boring consistency, and how repeating the same behavior at scale quietly outperformed brilliance. Once predictability is established, the next step is far less glamorous and far more powerful. Boring consistency. This is where most people fail, because consistency doesn't feel impressive. It doesn't create instant attention. It doesn't make headlines, but it builds something far more valuable over time: confidence. Rockefeller understood that trust isn't created by occasional excellence. It's created by repeated reliability. He didn't try to outperform competitors in dramatic ways. Instead, he focused on delivering the same result, the same quality, and the same behavior again and again. That repetition signaled stability in an unstable market. In the oil business, this meant consistent supply, consistent pricing, and consistent execution. No surprises, no sudden changes. While others chased short-term wins or reacted emotionally to market swings, Rockefeller stayed steady. That steadiness made planning easier for everyone connected to him: investors, suppliers, railroads, and partners. Consistency reduces decision fatigue.
When people know what to expect from you, they stop questioning every interaction. They stop renegotiating terms. They stop hedging their commitments. Over time, this creates momentum. Deals move faster, relationships deepen, systems expand. This is why consistency outperforms brilliance. Brilliance is unpredictable. It shows up sometimes and disappears at others. Consistency shows up whether conditions are good or bad. Rockefeller didn't need to be the smartest person in every room. He needed to be the most dependable one, and dependability compounds. Boring consistency also creates asymmetry. While competitors burn energy trying to stand out, consistent operators quietly accumulate trust, and trust attracts opportunity without effort. People prefer working with what feels stable, even if alternatives look more exciting. Safety pulls harder than novelty when real risk is involved. Importantly, Rockefeller didn't confuse consistency with stagnation. He improved systems internally, optimized operations, and adapted strategically. But those changes were absorbed without disrupting external expectations. From the outside, he appeared steady. From the inside, he was constantly refining. That separation is critical. This step teaches a counterintuitive lesson. The more boring your external behavior becomes, the more freedom you gain internally. Consistency buys you time, patience, and margin for error. It creates a buffer that absorbs shocks and protects long-term positioning. In the next chapter, we'll examine the third step of Rockefeller's reputation system, how he let others take public risk for him, and why staying behind the scenes often creates more power than being visible.
The first two steps, predictability and boring consistency, set the foundation. But the next step is where leverage begins to multiply, letting others take public risk for you. Most people assume power comes from being in front, taking bold action, and making all the moves themselves. Rockefeller showed the opposite. He understood that influence grows fastest when other people demonstrate confidence in you, voluntarily and publicly. Think about it. If a major investor openly supports a venture or a supplier publicly commits to your terms, they are effectively putting their reputation on the line. The world notices. Their endorsement signals this person is reliable. You can trust them. You didn't have to advertise it yourself. Someone else did it for you. Rockefeller structured his deals so that key partners and financiers assumed visible risk. Railroads, for example, agreed to long-term contracts. Investors publicly invested in his ventures. Suppliers guaranteed delivery. All of these actions signaled confidence, and because these risks were visible, they became proof of trust to the broader market. This approach works because human psychology responds to social validation. When one credible person bets on you, others subconsciously think, if they trust him, maybe I should too. This multiplies influence without additional effort. One endorsement sparks another. One public commitment creates a chain reaction. Rockefeller didn't need to convince everyone himself. He let others convince the world for him. There's also a strategic advantage here. By allowing others to take visible risk, you insulate yourself from backlash. If a deal goes wrong, the public sees that everyone involved voluntarily assumed risk. Responsibility is shared, and your credibility remains intact. The system shifts perception from did he succeed because he forced it to did he succeed because people chose to support him. Rockefeller combined this step with the first two flawlessly. Predictable behavior and boring consistency made him low risk to work with. That reliability encouraged partners to go on the record, making commitments that reinforced his reputation. Step 1 and 2 were internal. Step 3 made trust external, visible, and contagious. The power of this step is subtle but profound.
Most people chase attention, recognition, or dominance. Rockefeller chased something less obvious. He positioned others to publicly validate him. By letting others assume risk first, he amplified his leverage exponentially. The trust of one influential person became the trust of many, creating a network of confidence that was nearly impossible to disrupt. In the next chapter, we'll examine the final step of Rockefeller's reputation system, converting trust into leverage. This is where all the groundwork, predictability, consistency, and public validation transforms into real, measurable influence and financial power. By the time Rockefeller reached this stage, the hard work was already done. Predictability created stability, consistency reinforced confidence, and public validation multiplied belief. What remained was the final move, converting trust into leverage. Leverage is not force, it's advantage created by position. Rockefeller rarely needed to demand better terms, push aggressively, or dominate negotiations. The system did that work for him. When people trust you deeply, they offer better conditions before you ask. They remove friction because they want continuity, not conflict. Banks extended credit more easily. Suppliers offered favorable terms. Partners committed for longer periods. None of this required public pressure. It happened quietly because working with Rockefeller felt safe, predictable, and stable. Trust lowered perceived risk, and lower risk unlocks opportunity. This is where trust becomes power. Not loud power, not visible dominance, but structural power, the kind that shapes outcomes before conversations even begin. Rockefeller didn't need to win arguments. His reputation already framed the decision space. People negotiated within terms that favored him because those terms felt reasonable. What's important here is that leverage only works after trust is established. Without trust, leverage looks like manipulation. With trust, it looks like leadership. Rockefeller understood this difference. He didn't rush the process. He allowed trust to mature until leverage felt natural, almost inevitable. This final step also explains why his system was so durable. Competitors could copy tactics, but they couldn't replicate reputation overnight. Trust takes time to build and seconds to destroy. Rockefeller protected it fiercely. He avoided unnecessary public conflict, kept behavior consistent, and ensured that every advantage he gained reinforced rather than weakened his credibility. Now bring this forward to the modern world. The environment has changed, but the structure hasn't. Businesses with strong reputations get better partnerships. Creators with consistent output earn audience loyalty. Individuals who are reliable get opportunities others never see. The loudest voices attract attention, but the trusted ones attract commitment. Today, trust is built through consistency, not charisma. Algorithms reward reliability. Markets reward predictability. People reward those who make their lives easier, not louder. The same system Rockefeller used still operates, only the mediums have changed. This is why execution matters more than intensity. Showing up consistently builds trust. Delivering without surprises compounds it. Letting others validate you multiplies it. And once trust reaches a critical mass, leverage appears. Not because you demanded it, but because the system now favors you. This is the real lesson behind Rockefeller's wealth. It wasn't luck, it wasn't ruthlessness, it was structure. A reputation system designed to convert trust into lasting advantage. I'm breaking these power systems down into a simple playbook anyone can apply. The link will be in the description.